Welcome. This is the 2019-2020 update, and our topic today is Medicare, What You Need to Know. I'm Melissa Joy, founder of Pearl Planning, and today we have a special guest. She's a Medicare guru, Joanne Giardini-Russell. Joanne, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Melissa. This is great to be here. Appreciate it.
So you are the founder of Boomer Health Group. Can you tell me more about what you do?
Absolutely. So what we do is we just do Medicare, and I say that in jest. We help people through the entire Medicare process, and we'll talk about that somewhat today in the webinar. But it's a lot of complexity out there and a lot of confusion. So we help people navigate the basic decision of, do we need to do this? Should I do this? Things like that, and we handhold them through the process, all the way through technically enrolling into the products that people need for their Medicare supplementation. So we are a virtual company. We operate across the country, the US, and we are, however, based 30 miles from you in Michigan. So it's a great fun actually for us. We've got 7 advisors that sit on the phone and do Medicare consultations all day long.
That's really cool. We worked together and collaborated on clients' cases. I find Medicare to be a really challenging, complex topic, so I really appreciate when I can work with someone who's thinking about Medicare all day. Before we get started, I'm about to share our agenda, but I wanted to make sure to kind of provide our required disclosures up front. It reminded me when I was putting this into the presentation that both of our companies are authentic and transparent, and whenever you have questions about either how we're compensated or how things work, you're coming to a place that wants to have those conversations. I know that's the way I feel about Pearl Planning, and that's what I've experienced working with Boomer Health Group. So let's get started. We aren't going to take too much of your time, but there's a lot of meaty topics that are in this presentation. We have made this presentation relevant for the future. So some people may just be about to become Medicare participants, and for others, they have their annual kind of check-in to make sure that they're enrolled in the right plan. So I want to make sure that we cover as much as we can, and then at the end, we're going to talk about how Medicare decisions get coordinated with an overall financial plan. So with that, I think we should dig in.
Yeah,
and Joanne,
absolutely.
as we're getting started, I'd love to hear from you how you explain what is Medicare to new clients that you work with.
You don't want to tackle that one, huh, Melissa?
Yeah, right. This is all your job.
Oh my goodness. So I just a quick background with me. I have been in the insurance space, and I actually was in this financial arena a little bit like Melissa. But what happened was I was amazed that sitting in some financial firms, Medicare wasn't talked about. So that was sort of a glitch and a disconnect there. So fast forward, that's why we focus on Medicare. Pearl Planning, I will say, just does a phenomenal job with bringing Medicare to everybody's attention, whether that's a 64-year-old getting prepped or a 70-year-old in a review. It's such a huge complexity area. People don't understand it. Advisors generally don't do a good job with it. But what Medicare really is it's your health insurance. It is a health insurance option for those people traditionally over age 65. And there are other parameters where they can get Medicare. We're just going to today stick to 65 plus, just assuming you're eligible for that. And you are eligible for Medicare at age 65. So did you have a question, Melissa?
No, that's absolutely perfect. We're actually going to show a little decision tree in a moment, which you do not need to memorize, that talks about how to know that you're eligible. It sounds very straightforward, just age 65, but that's not always the case.
It's not always the case, and that's where people like us come in to help in the coaching process. But what I like people to just understand about Medicare is don't be afraid of it so much. It is just health insurance. It really is just another option. So when you're eligible for that coverage, and it consists of 2 parts, it's Part A and Part B. Part A is hospitalization coverage, and that strictly covers you room and board, et cetera, for skilled nursing and hospitals and such. And then the Part B is a totally different component that covers the doctors and the x-rays and the CAT scans and things like that. And it just, you can get one part without the other part. You can get Part A and no Part B. That's where the decision tree that we'll see comes into play. And that's where guiding people along through the right questioning is really, really critical. So just remember that Medicare is just health insurance, and then it just becomes a little less scary when you think of it like that.
Although I will say, to me, health insurance is really complex. So I always appreciate a professional consultative approach.
Well,
now,
I would agree with
a
you
lot
there, Melissa, in that, sorry to interject, but that pointing it out too is we don't even, our firm does not handle under 65 health insurance because
right.
health insurance can be that specialized. So we, we have referral people that can help our 62-year-old spouse and a 65-year-old husband, for example, but it's a great point. It really, really is specialized. So make sure if you're talking to somebody that says they know Medicare, really dig into what they know. Does it mean they can just do a policy here and there because you're licensed? That doesn't mean much to us. We deal with this 12-hour days. So that's a great thing to point out there.
Now, if it were just Part A and Part B, which constitutes traditional Medicare, that would be great. But there's additional decisions that many people make. Is that correct?
Correct. So after somebody signs up, once we know that they need Part A and B, or they want Part A and B, we help them put that into place. And then after that, that's going to cover 80% of their health care. And there is no coverage then for the 20%. And that 20% is your responsibility as the Medicare beneficiary. And there is no cap to Medicare's limitation in terms of the bill. So what happens is people are so used to group insurance, for example, that has a financial cap to it, a $6,000 out of pocket or whatever your out of pocket limits are. That
which still feels like a lot.
It still feels like a lot, right? But so talk about 20% of an unlimited number, that could be really, really big. So we don't want that to happen to anybody. And we do run across people that only have Part A and B in place, and that can be problematic. So what we do is we then pivot to, okay, we need to solve the 20% problem. So you have a couple of different paths that you can take, and one is called Medigap, and that is a little policy that basically we help you put in place. And it really obligates an insurance company to handle all of the costs that Medicare is not going to pay on your behalf. And that's the simplest way of saying it. So you buy this little thing for $100 and some a month, and they just pay everything that Medicare doesn't pay for, simply. It travels with you. It's very flexible in terms of travel or living, snowbirds. Michigan snowbirds are often elsewhere. So it will cover them wherever they want to go. It will cover them at any doctor that accepts Medicare in the entire country. So it's nice and it's very convenient. And for budgeting for what you do, it's very nice because someone can just put it in their budget as to what they pay for that premium. It does not cover dental, vision, and hearing, and it does not cover drugs. So we then have to work with the person to put a drug plan in place, and then also dental, vision, should they want that, and some other ancillary things, should they want those products. The other way to get somebody's Medicare coverage delivered to them is called Medicare Advantage. So we like to be really clear here that there's two different paths to what you can purchase. One is Medigap and one is Medicare Advantage. In fact, on our website, and something we provide people, that we have a 49-minute video, which sounds crazy, but it's a very in-depth, detailed look at the two products and looking at every angle we could come up with and think of. But it really gives them a sense of understanding the two. Medicare Advantage is a privatized managed care situation, very simply. It is funded by the government. A lot of people don't realize that Medicare Advantage is funded by the U.S. government. And what that means is Uncle Sam is essentially paying the carriers $1,000 a month is the rough figure that they are giving to each carrier to provide your care. And then an agent signs you up for that managed care program, and they are commissioned, typically even more than the Medigap side of things. And they are putting you into this program, and you just have to be okay with having a managed care situation, because there are rules, there are co-pays, there are networks. and they're fine. They work for a lot of people and they work great for a lot of people. You just have to be a little more diligent and be a little more prepared that every fall you're really going to dig into the documents of the plan. If things change, you might have to tweak more often than Medigap. So it just depends on personalities and budgets and, desire for healthcare, what it looks like, which one people choose. We do both, and we have no problem with you purchasing either one. You just need to understand what you're purchasing is what we want to happen.
That's a similarity, because when I start working with people, certainly there's some commonalities of things that we cover, but it really is personalized to their unique circumstances and situations. So I appreciate that. You don't already know what the end result is going to be until you've had the right conversation with the family.
Right. And when we do go through those two pieces, there's Medigap, Medicare Advantage. I do want, because of what you do, Melissa, is pointing out that long-term care is not going to be covered by any of these avenues of Medicare Advantage or Medigap. So
Right.
there are, provisions for skilled nursing, but this is health insurance. This is designed to get you better after a knee rehab, for example. It is not designed for a lengthy, 2-year stay in a facility. Some of the things that we know all of the families deal with out there. So I hope that's a concern for everybody, to at least have a conversation with your firm,
Yes.
appropriate, whether that's 50, 55, all those ages, because it is a very common misunderstanding that Medicare is going to pay for that stuff. So, boy, I just hope everybody's talking to you about that.
Yeah, that's definitely, talking about longevity, I find, is more and more common where the client brings it up, and it's an important conversation to anticipate and really prepare for. And that goes into the coordination of these Medicare decisions with the rest of your overall financial life. Well, let's dig into some of the details just briefly. We're not going to go over this entire chart, but what are some of the things that you need to be aware of if you are approaching Medicare age to know whether or not you're eligible?
Yeah, these are great. So what our service does for people is take this chart, and we become a
Right.
virtual chart. It's so funny because I look at these charts and they give me a headache, and we live in this land and it's easy in our heads, but it's just so funny when you see it laid out like that. We understand why the world thinks it's kind of crazy and confusing, and it is, but it's just so funny. So what we do, and I can just give an example. I had a call a few weeks ago from a cardiologist out in Boston, and his friend in Indiana had sent him to call us. So he did. And it was funny just because I was literally on vacation, walking around, picked up the call. And he said, I'm just confused. I'm turning 65. So we, on our end, we have a series of questions that we just know. So, are you still working? Yes, I am. What's his answer? How's your health? Good. Great. Are you on your work coverage? Yes, I am. How much are you paying for that? And he knew it was, $150 a month. Medicare has surcharges for high income people. So I know in my head that if I tell him to go through to get Medicare, it's going to cost him at least 3 times more than he's paying right now. He's happy with his group plan. He doesn't pay much for it. He's not even using it because he's pretty healthy, and he plans to work for a few more years. I asked him if he was funding a health savings account, and he said he was. And I said, okay. And because he was still a working cardiologist, I assumed, and I asked him, are you taking Social Security yet? I assume not, but are you? And he said, no, I'm not. So all of those things together led me to give him a final, just quick, this was within 10 minutes, just a check-in and say, you should not do anything. You should absolutely bypass, do not sign up for Part A, do not get Part B, you do nothing until you decide to retire or if your health changes. So what we do then is we just get his email address, we put him in our system with his date of birth, and then he can stay connected to us. And he wrote after and just said, I feel just so much relief, because you're hit with, this chart is almost, if you can visualize the whole world, that is the chart. Your neighbors are telling you different things like this. They're telling you to go left, go right.
Right.
Everybody's telling you something. You're reading something. You're getting postcards in the mail. You're getting agent phone calls. It's just this cacophony of craziness. So he just appreciated just the whole, question result. That was it. Like I said, it was less than 10 minutes, and that's it. He doesn't need us for a few years, and that's how simple it can be. So when we talk about getting that assessment at 64 and a half, that's exactly why, because he can now do the right thing and not do the wrong thing. If he didn't talk to us, he likely would have signed up for Part A because everyone thinks you have to and you don't. So, we just eliminate problems if you do it early. So
perfect. And that's
don't be
not to
afraid of
take that advice
conversation.
and say, you wouldn't take that advice and say, well, I'm still working, so I don't need to call Joanne to make sure that I don't need to sign up. Is that right?
No, we want you to get confirmation that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
And sometimes
perfect.
that's as important as not, doing one thing, but you just want to be really confident that you're doing the right thing, because we can't fix the wrong thing later necessarily. So that's why we
Absolutely, I
call this
agree.
magic of age 64 and a half. It's really important. The problem we feel is that people, and when you're 64 and a half, you are, like I said, you're solicited like crazy. You don't know who to trust. You don't know where to go. So I understand it. You shut down. Some of those people just shut down, don't want to talk to anybody because you just don't know who to believe. And I totally get that. So it's a tough thing to be in the midst of, but it's really important that you get the right advice. We even advocate, just go get 2 other opinions. Go for it. Just bring us, or bring your questions, put them all down on paper. It's
that fits
important.
back with that transparency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have, we kind of already talked about this, but you think that age 64 and a half is the perfect age where someone like me should remind my clients, hey, we have resources, you need to make this decision this year, or many of you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that that's just an easy reminder. If your friends are approaching that age, that's the perfect time where you can prepare. It's not last minute. You don't feel hopefully as stressed as you might otherwise. So I love, start your review of decision making at age 64 and a half.
We also have we've created like a starter kit, if you will. We call it our starter kit, and we send that to people. So I sent it to a gentleman a couple hours ago. And what it is just a series of documents and links, and it just gets them a prep as to the conversation. And we literally write in this email saying, look, just take a piece of paper, get a folder labeled Medicare, and start talking your questions into that folder. And
perfect.
It sounds a little juvenile ABC, but it really is important to say, my friend told me A, my friend said B, just literally write that down. So we have people that call on their consultation time when they're ready, when they digest all that information and they feel good to get on the phone. That's when they go and schedule a call, and we go through the questions. So I had a woman the other day, it was great. She said, we got through all the stuff, and she goes, I have 9 questions. Where can we start? I said, how about number 1? So we literally, we just went through the 9 questions. And by the end of that hour, she had everything she needs to make a really good decision that they feel good about. And that's what we want. We don't want people not getting the right thing or getting the wrong information. It's a lot easier for us as a firm to have very happy, satisfied people that don't call us with complaints, because that's just, you know what I mean? Why would we want to sit there and do that? So our goal is to have everything just go very fluidly, smoothly, everything, and you go off into the sunset and retire.
Well, so much of the world of financial advice, I think, has been built up to be what I would call smoke and mirrors. Just complexity is
yes.
valued by the person speaking,
yes.
and to clients. And I actually think it's brilliant to simplify it and just say, put everything in a bucket of the questions that you have. When you can make the complex more explainable and simple, that's, to me, a measure of success. So I appreciate that philosophy.
Thank you. And we often say to people that now that you're 65, we're going to treat you like you're 5. A, B, C, D, E, and they laugh, and the typical reaction is, thank you, thank God you're going to do it
exactly.
that way. So thanks.
So I know that it matters whether you're working, and often the size of the employer that you're working with. And then also, what other pieces of information are relevant when you're making a decision?
Yeah, so employer size. So if you work for a small employer, which is under 20 employees, Medicare rules say you have to sign up for Medicare. So that's one of our catchphrases for sure. And contributing to a health savings account is a very common one. So especially when we're working with advisors like yourself, often the advice is to put money into an HSA because it can make sense. I have an HSA. I love it. So if you're doing that, that's one of our questions. And if you're doing that, we just tell you then not to sign up for Part A of Medicare, because that's technically not an HSA compliant insurance plan. So we have to stop that contribution. And it's very easy, and then we're all on the same page. If people are going on leaving the employer place, the plan. So if somebody leaves at 64 and a half, let's say, and then they take COBRA for 6 months. So COBRA, all COBRA is taking your work coverage with you. And you're basically going to pay the premium typically that the employer was paying. Sometimes employers will contribute to COBRA, not that often. But something people need to understand is that COBRA coverage is not, in the eyes of Medicare, what we call credible. So it means that people, when you're looking at COBRA and debating COBRA, we never let a 65-year-old stay on COBRA. So if somebody truly were 64 and a half, we would say go 6 months, stay on COBRA, and then come to us right at 65. So we have to be careful, which is, again, always part of that assessment. So whether we're talking to you at 64 and a half, and now you're 67, and we're trying to help you separate from the employer insurance and get to Medicare, we have to do things technically correct and give you certain forms so that you can eliminate even things like the Part B penalty. Because if you don't do things right, that's when you do get penalized, and that's when you do have claims denied, and you have all these issues, or you get, again, penalty on your HSA contributions and things like that. So penalties do come into play. They're not as prevalent as people think. Everybody has heard typically of that Part B penalty, and it's funny how many people come at 70 and like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get penalized, and they're not even close to being penalized. They're not going to be penalized. So Medicare can be, this, again, the charts lead complexity in our brains, but if we do lay it out simply with, okay, yes, you have to do the right things at the right time. The problem is you just got to know the right time and the right forms and things like that. So that's kind of
Right.
that is what we're here for, is to walk you through that. So I will say a lot of our service is stages. So I just sent the enrollment kit kind of thing to my person a couple hours ago, and I told them, I said, check in about September. And then we're going to, once you get through this, we're going to redo, assess. So we often will work with people in a 1 to 3 step process really very easily, because when you put all of this together in a 45 to a minute to an hour session, it is massive overload. So even when you're listening to this today, don't feel like you have to understand half of what we're saying. It's just, the message is basically start the process, be logical, get your questions down. We will help you, and you will avoid all penalties if you're working with us basically at 64 and a half on, or with, people qualified to help you through this.
That's perfect. I think what I typically do when I have a conversation with a client is encourage them to schedule a call earlier, acknowledging that there is a busier time, but that can often create, the pathway, the guidance for what decisions will be coming.
Absolutely.
So if we could switch gears for a moment, we've been focusing on, your initial days in Medicare, but then there's also an annual election period each year. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct. It's coming up. We're getting nervous.
And it's coming up. Yeah, we're talking in late August, but your busy season is really the 3rd and 4th quarter of each year.
It is. It's chaos, and it already starts heating up in August. And what happens is, unfortunately, part of this is just done by the industry, and it creates the confusion. There's a couple different pieces. So when somebody has a Medigap policy, they are actually able to move that plan any day of the year. And we'll touch on a little bit more about Medigap when we talk about 2020 changes, but total misconception that it's only October through December. So we get a lot of this pent up, demand later that could have been spread out over the year. So it's a little frustrating that this even exists. But technically, October 15th to December 7th is the window where people can come to us and we change drug plans for them, because that is the annual time to look at your new medications, and the new plans come out basically October 1st. We have the data, then October 15th, we can officially enroll people into new plans for the 2020 calendar year. This is also a time when people that have Medicare Advantage plans, if they have learned during the year, a lot of times we find that people don't understand that Medigap even exists. And they come to us and say, well, I didn't know it was there. Can I get it? Well, you can maybe if you qualify for it, because there are pre-existing conditions that do come into play with Medicare as well. So what happens is during October 15th to December 7th, we need to take somebody on a Medicare Advantage plan, put them into underwriting, which is just, it's not anything, no blood draws, things like that. It's just a series of questions on an application. And we have that go back to the carrier, and the carrier says yes or no in terms of coverage. And we go with their answer. And then if it's a yes, we start them January 1st, and then we pair that with the drug plan. So it's a very, very busy time for us. And again, we can spread some of it out, but it is a really important window to understand. So what we do is, again, people on Medicare Advantage plans all year, if we see them in April, we say, well, we can't do anything until the fall. We keep them in our system tagged with, return back and try and facilitate that. But it's, yes.
Is there any time period that pre-existing condition review would not be relevant?
Yes. So when you have, and that's part of the 64.5-year-old, going back to that piece again, the conversation. So when somebody is brand new to Medicare, and that doesn't mean only at age 65, but if there's a person that is new to Medicare at, say, 68 years old, whenever they go and elect to trigger, to turn on, to start your Part B of Medicare coverage, B as in boy, when that coverage starts with the government, a person has a 6-month window, and this is called their open enrollment period. They have an open enrollment period to go to a Medigap carrier to get any coverage they want, any plan they want, without answering one medical condition. And this is really, really important for people to know that have pretty serious pre-existing conditions, because what we're able to give them, if we give them Medigap, we're giving them a policy that is going to handle all, pieces of everything that's Medicare is not going to cover. So I've had terminal people, unfortunately, that I have literally given this phenomenal coverage to, and they have gone to MD Anderson for cancer treatments. Ultimately, they have passed away, but they had this phenomenal coverage that allowed them to go to places that maybe a Medicare Advantage plan wouldn't allow them to go to. So whenever we hear somebody in part of our talks is, when we hear someone say, well, I had a cancer episode 3 years ago, we have to be really sure that they understand how important that 6-month window is potentially for them for coverage.
If someone is listening and they know they want to or need to review their coverages, would you have them wait until October 15th to have the discussion, or is that something they could have now?
Well, it's funny you say that, because when we ask a person out there, typically, do you have a Medicare supplement? They'll say yes, but they don't know what they have. So the first step is really pulling out your card. And what do you bring to the doctor? Typically, if you have 2 cards, if you have a card for a carrier and a drug card, that means you have Medigap. If you pull one card out of your purse or wallet and it says, your Medicare Advantage plan name on it, and you use it at the pharmacy and the doctor's office, you probably have Medicare Advantage. If you have Medigap, and then we talk about some of the plan changes for next year and you want to review it now, by all means, call us now. Worst thing is, so what? You call us now, we put you in the system and say, we can't do anything till November 1st. We'll call you in that window there, or tell you to call us back. So I encourage all calls, emails, we have a chat function. We have all different ways. And I think we're going to touch on that, how we can communicate with us. But the biggest thing is just communicating. We'll get into you, and we've got more than enough capacity to get everybody done. So that would be on you. I just want people to feel comfortable enough to have an inbound call that you're not going to get harassed. We do not send postcards. We don't invite you to chicken dinners. We joke about all that stuff. We don't do that kind of stuff.
So tell me a little bit, as we're thinking into this year's enrollment period, what has changed? What are you talking about or concerned about in leading into 2020?
Yeah, there's actually a lot. So this year, for 2020, it seems like there's a lot more than normal going on in Medicare. So we're seeing a lot of changes to the entire Medicare Advantage program, not so much company specific, but you got to remember the government is funding Medicare Advantage. So they're actually starting to build in a lot of perks that are just going to get tougher and tougher for the people to turn down, almost, because they're putting in things like maybe some home health care. One plan we've heard of is going to offer maybe Uber rides to take them to doctors
Mm.
and things like that. So it's getting tough to, for people to just totally dissect and not and ignore that side, but you got to dig carefully into the plans. But that's one, but that's in kind of the entirety of Medicare as a concept. And
So
the
an
other thing,
evolution, in
an
essence, or
evolution, yes,
modernization.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's really, it's just the first year. It's like seeming like okay, now there really is a lot of stuff to talk about, which then opens up the entire world of 60 million seniors, because then everybody should be talking, looking at least about with their plan. On the Medigap side of things, there's a macro plan that in 2015, this has been announced. We've been waiting for this actually for 5 years. So we actually are thrilled this is finally happening, because we can stop talking about it to some degree. So it's seriously, it's like, it's funny, but it's finally here and we're all excited. So there's Plan F and there's Plan C as in Charlie. So those are two plans that are going to be eliminated by the government. And what they're doing is essentially just saying, look, we don't want anybody selling a plan out there that doesn't have a deductible. That is simply all they're saying. So Plan F and Plan C do not have any deductible at all. So if you actually run into people that are 88 or 92 or, and they say, I don't have any bills at all, they are not kidding. They have no bills. They have zero bills. So what they do is they pay for their Plan F and then they have no bills. That's how it works. So the government just says, no, we want you to think twice about using your medical care. So we're going to make you have a deductible. So what we're offering most of the time these days is called Plan G as in girl. And Plan G has a $185 annual deductible. That's it. That is the only difference between F and Plan G, is we are introducing now a $185 deductible. And Melissa, I know you're closer to my age than 65. So if I had a $185 deductible, I would be over the moon excited.
Right.
Compared to $67.50, I think mine is this year. So, I know some people think that's, not, it is what it is. So resources
Change can be
aside,
stressful.
yeah. So Plan G would be the suggested plan at this point. The problem with staying in a Plan F or a Plan C, if you're listening and you have those plans, and yes, change can be stressful, we're trying to avoid problems down the road for these people. So when somebody has a Plan F and the problem can be, you call your carrier and you say, hey, I heard this girl say that Plan F is going away. They will tell you that, yes, it's going away, but you're grandfathered in. And that is very true. That is absolutely true. The problem that they're not telling you about is the fact that if you are in that plan and you are healthy as can be, that's phenomenal. So 3 years later, 5 years later, whatever happens down the pipeline, the problem is that the new people that will not be coming into that plan any longer, that are giving premium and that are healthy and not using the services, you're going to be in this plan where there's going to be none of that coming in. So as a pool of insurance people, insurance is basically, losses and money going in. So all of a sudden you're not going to have the money coming in from the healthy people. You're going to have the older, sicker population in that pool of business. Claims are going to come. Rates are going to go up, and we're already seeing this with Plan F. Rates are going up already faster than Plan G. Then you have to be concerned because, like I said, we have pre-existing conditions. What if in 5 years you've developed a condition that we cannot move you out of this plan? You'll be stuck. So then it's just harder. We see, some plans are $400 and $500 a month, and they should be $200. So we just don't want people stuck in that plan. So it makes sense to people we talk through, but it's a concern.
There's not a flat decision. Pre-existing conditions typically would matter if you had a Plan F and right now, but it sounds like a worthy conversation. I know that I've had a few clients where they've had that discussion with Boomer
Yep.
Health Group.
Yep, it makes sense to avoid. It's if you knew what's going to happen with the market tomorrow, would you pull your money out to save it to the next week? So control what you can control.
Yeah, it's definitely there's clarity on what the future is there. Mm-hmm. Anything else we need to be aware of in this for upcoming 2020?
I would say drug plans are just something to always be cognizant of. If you have an individual Part D drug program, there are 29 plans, for example, in Michigan that operate here. And so many people, I think the statistic we've seen is between 13 and 15% only actually change their drug plans every year. And that can be a big source of funds for people. I remember someone last fall who he didn't know Xarelto was going to fall off of his formulary, which means it wouldn't be covered. So if we weren't looking at his drug plan last fall, he would have renewed it because that's what he had done for the prior 6 years. And he would have just renewed it. And then he would have, what problem is he would have gone into the pharmacy in February, let's say, and he would have learned that Xarelto fell off of his plan. And now he has a $5,000 cost in his world that he didn't know he had before. So
do you want people to have their list of prescription drugs
yes,
when in advance of your discussion?
that's a great thing to have with them. Yes, yes. And you'll see, if you're in our system, they'll see a push for, hey, it's time to look at these drug plans. But absolutely, if you can print it, you can email it ahead of time, you can do all sorts of things. But yeah, we do go through those.
Perfect.
The plans change every year, and the concept and the idea of these plans is to get more of your money, quite honestly. It's pharmaceuticals are changing pharmacy, and you don't know if your pharmacy fell off a preferred list, you don't know if your drug fell off a formulary. It's a really good opportunity. You're probably a good chance you're just leaving money on the table if you don't do that.
That's really helpful. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to change gears slightly and talk about how your general financial plan fits in with these Medicare decisions. And so that's an area where, first of all, I find that we talk about healthcare more and more than I ever have. I think part of that is we have better data and information. And the other part is people just recognize that healthcare is inflating at a much higher rate in terms of its costs than other parts and costs of retirement. In fact, healthcare is one of the only expenses that typically increases as we age. You'd be surprised, but many other expenses, for example, housing, tends to decline until you're in those years where you may need some extra skilled care. Mm-hmm. So when I'm doing a financial plan, I always both try to coordinate with professionals like Joanne, and then also I talk well before we get to age 65 or the day that you hang up your hat and retire about anticipated costs of healthcare. And we even, in financial plans, inflate your healthcare costs separately and at a higher rate than other costs that you have in retirement. And this is just one example taken from estimates showing you how much your costs can change, but from age 65 to age 85 in terms of what you may be spending. I don't know if you see that typically with your clients, Joanne.
I do. And in fact, I was at a Social Security presentation last night for for DFCU. The educator does a nice job on talking Social Security. So I went to peek at his information, and I was very flabbergasted, even with the cost of living, what the anticipated 10 and 20-year projections are for the portion of healthcare that's going to eat up Social Security. It was astounding. Just I just see problems going forward, and I do think most planners aren't even putting enough in terms of inflation in terms of it's going to be staggering, and I don't I hope something changes with it. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's a great thing to really. That's
another important point. There's a lack of clarity about where healthcare is a trigger button when it comes to politics and government.
Right.
So there's less clarity on what healthcare will look like over time. This is, again, one of those make your brain hurt decision charts, but I really think it's important for people who decide to retire prior to or before they reach Medicare age that they have a plan in order to pay for their medical coverage. So that's where health savings accounts become a no-no in your Medicare years, but prior to that, they can be invaluable. And I encourage people to not look at it as a bucket that you need to empty by the end of each year, but to consider turning health savings accounts into an investment vehicle where they can save for their future premiums, especially if they have their eye on an early retirement. Mm-hmm. It's certainly complex. And then one thing that we both know that Americans that receive Medicare hate is
Yes.
when they get an IRMA surcharge. And an IRMA surcharge is essentially someone who pays more for their Medicare coverage because their income, they're in a higher income tax bracket.
Right.
So I've often referred actually to information that you provided, Joanne, on your website. This is a look at, the different areas of how much you would have to make in order to start getting those extra surcharges. For a single person, it starts between $85,000 and $107,000. And so what do you tell people when they're either frustrated or they think that they are being charged and they don't necessarily owe those surcharges?
Yeah, so it's interesting with the, we call it a tax. We just flat out, look, this is a tax.
Yep.
This is just a tax. This is a way of
Kind of
collecting
means
revenue.
testing. Yep.
Means testing, absolutely. There's also a surcharge, and you'll note on your slide, it does say Part B and Part D. So on the drugs, so it's very difficult when we have to come along and tell a 65-year-old who's making a lot of money that he's going to pay $77 for a surcharge on the drugs, and he doesn't take any medications. So he's literally paying about $100 a month for essentially nothing. And that is very aggravating for people. So
right.
Part of the conversation that you do very well and your firm does is talking about these things even as 62 and 60 and whatever, because income flows are very important to time with the arriving at Medicare age. So it gives you an opportunity to go back and talk about a lot of these things. So what Medicare does is if you are signing up at age 65, because that's what you should be doing, they will look back to your tax returns from 2 years ago. From 2 years prior, they're going to look at your return. If you're married, it's going to be a joint return. And if you're a stay-at-home mother the entire time, it doesn't matter. It's still a joint return. And you're going to pay these figures are per person per month. So a lot of people arrive at Medicare age. Number one, they think it's free to some degree. They think they've paid into the system and it's going to be free. So it can be staggering when they sit with us and like, you've got to be kidding. It's going to be X amount of dollars. And it is. So we piece together that puzzle, but there's a couple of things we can do. So when we're listening and they're saying, this was my income, and we know they're retiring, we can help them go through an appeal process. So just because you have this surcharge when you're entering Medicare doesn't mean it necessarily can't be appealed. So if somebody is retiring, we will work them through the appeal process and give them proper forms. Again, a lot of this is just the proper forms at the proper time. And once they are assessed the amount that they're going to pay to Medicare for their Part B and D premiums, that letter comes from the Social Security Administration after they've filed for Medicare. And it's going to come with a letter. Then at that point, we can talk about the appeal, because you can't appeal anything you don't necessarily have yet. So we have to wait for the letter and go in the flow of things. So therefore, we get that letter 2 weeks later, then it's time. On the form, you have a life event basically that will allow them to appeal. So that is often work stoppage, work reduction. Could be death, it could be divorce, a couple things, but it's mostly work stoppage and work reduction. So then we've had people literally go from the very, very top tier, $400 and some, all the way down to the $135 base amount, because they walk in with that form. If you don't know and you're working with somebody that doesn't coach you through the forms, just know that will eventually work its way out of the system, because they're always looking back 2 years. So if you're retiring today and then next year you're still paying a high rate, again, remember they're always going to look back 2 years. So every fall, what Medicare does is they reassess your premium, and about November you get another letter saying, hey, your 2020 charge is going to be this, and your 2021, 2022, but they're always looking back 2 years. So eventually it'll fall off if your income is going down as just a retired person. If not, I would be proactive, and that's a weak coach, is be proactive and go back and get it reduced today if you can. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's doable. It's not, if you have high investment income, because Melissa's done a fabulous job for you for 15 years, that's terrific, but you're not going to win that appeal either. So just know, just because you have a lot of assets, it's all income. Okay. So if a one-time event,
and you need a life event.
A life event, if you sold a business per se, or sold a rental property, there's things like that. Most things are worth appealing. And we joke, if you win the lottery, they're not going to feel sorry for you and let you appeal that either. But, things are appealable.
Yeah, and this is one of two, it gets complicated because if you've retired, you may, I hope, have different choices of where you'll take your money during your retirement years. And then you also have a required minimum distribution if you had retirement accounts that starts at age 70 and a half in many cases. So the decisions that we make together about how you'll fund the cash flow in your retirement really matter. And oftentimes there can be opportunities to keep your tax rate a little bit lower if you make the right decisions. This also plays in a part in your enrollment in if you are available for health insurance in the Affordable Care Act. When you enroll on the exchanges, if you're younger than 65 and you've retired early, then if you can keep your income low enough, you may be able to pay less in your premium. So all of those are kind of competing factors, and it is not something you can always avoid, but in some cases it's helpful to avoid it. And certainly I also point it out to people so it's not a surprise when they get that ugly letter in November, which can be really disappointing. So we try to anticipate and plan for a higher income and what it means for Medicare.
Right.
So we've been talking for more than 30 minutes, and we've only scratched the surface of this very complicated topic of your healthcare in retirement, and especially Medicare. But there are some opportunities for you to take action if you've enjoyed what you've been listening to. First, I would encourage you to visit both of our websites. Pearlplan.com is the website for Pearl Planning, and boomerhealthgroup.com. Do I have it right, Joanne?
Yes, boomerhealthgroup.com. Yes.
It's a wealth of resources. So could you explain what types of educational information that you have available there?
Yeah, so on our main site, we're proud to introduce a sister site, if you will, to this. But if you go to boomerhealthgroup.com, it will lead you to the site. If you go to the far right, there is something on the upper band called the Vault. And what we've done is we've worked all summer to release this piece. It's a vault of information is what we want it to be, and it is. So what we have is we have hundreds of hours of videos in there. We've got PDFs, we've got things that talk about the cost of Medicare. That video I referenced earlier, the 49 minutes on Medicare Advantage versus Medigap, that's in there. There's just a lot of information. We like you to understand everything you can understand. And we love having educated consumers then come to us for the final assistance. So we've really designed the site to be, there's some blogs. There are also our event page has, where I'll be speaking, whether it's a credit union or community ed or things like that that are going on in the Michigan area. We do a lot of that kind of stuff too. There's a chat function on our website. So we have a lot of people just pop up and ask a question. We do not capture all your information. It's just, put your name, Mark, just so we can talk and be courteous to Mark. So you can ask your question like that. There's so many ways to, like I mentioned earlier, to reach us. And there is a schedule button right on the Boomer Health Group main site on the right. You just schedule a consultation. Literally you get calendars that pop up. Pick a time that works for you. There are Saturday mornings, there are weekends, there are evenings, whatever you need. We can generally accommodate that with all of our folks. So if you get into our CRM system, we will send something out like once a month, and usually it's just a video piece or something of significance with Medicare that we think is important, but we don't spam. And, it just, again, we know how people are attacked in this area. So we try and do the opposite, really try and be the opposite kind of place.
I think that you stand out for that, and we both have newsletters that you can sign up for right off of our websites, where I think one of the reasons that I've really enjoyed working with you, Joanne, is that we both come from an approach that we can educate, and we start with that. We both have a point of view, and the point of view for me is to be able to educate, community and cultivate a better financial decisions in the world. And from both of our websites, we're both newer companies, and I think that there's an advantage there because you look a little more modern and have more modern features. So each of us has an ability to schedule directly off of our websites. Is there anything else you would mention, Joanne, about how to contact Boomer Health Group or, what to do next?
Big is just feel confident you have a team that can help you if you would like help. And just schedule a consult. The problem we have probably primarily is that I do a lot of the speaking, so I come out, everyone thinks they have to talk to just me. And I know, Melissa, you can vouch for that. Your clients have talked to Cameron a lot. Everybody is fantastic, and everybody can help, and everybody can do exactly what we talked about today. So it's finding your person. So if you're comfortable with Allie, great. That she happens to be my daughter is Allie, and Cameron is my son. So my 2 adult kids work with us. And then we've got the other advisors. We're just adding somebody in Virginia right now. We've got somebody in Iowa that started. So we're having little pockets around the country, but they have to follow the same, like I think you mentioned, culture. It's just very important to have, I think our history is parallel a little bit to Melissa, where we've been in that big industrial kind of place out there. And there's just, not a lot of help or a lot of, good things going on. So we're able to kind of craft what we want. So it's been really fun to do that. We take a lot of the, the feedback from clients seriously and give them what they want. So it's just that comfort zone. And, it's
And
so
to clarify,
mm-hmm.
you do work with people around the country. They don't have to be residents of Michigan.
Yeah, great point. So yes, we're probably technically licensed at this point in about 40 states, but when we need a license in a state we don't have, we could get that done in an hour. So that's not a problem at all. So yes. We work with advisors
Perfect.
absolutely across the country in all states. So your family, your friends, we do a lot of video. We get a lot of forwarding. I sent this to my uncle in Texas, things like that. So, don't be afraid of just making a quick phone call. Call our phone lines, and you will experience the least. We're horrible salespeople. We're good educators. We laugh because I usually have to come out and say, hey, by the way, we enroll people. And I should touch on that. So these are free consultations. So when I talk about that, I always forget to say that, it's free, because we just assume that, and people don't know that. We are free for the consultation. We are paid by an insurance carrier at the end, and it could be 2 years down the road or 5 years or immediately. But when we enroll you into a product, that's when we get paid. No difference.
Is there a difference in the cost if they did not use someone like you versus they did and they bought the same contract?
No. So if you go to any large carrier or any carrier period, you'll get the same pricing when you go and call them direct. You will just not have an agent to help you go through all this garbage. So it's important to know that it's free. It's funny. It's just, people deal with their home and auto people and they don't see it the same way, but those people are paid from you paying your auto premium. So it is absolutely no different than that. So it's a no charge consultation. So I think that's the scare, is like, what is it going to cost me? And what if they try and sell me something? So I always even have to say, I find it funny because we're horrible salespeople. It's like, oh, by the way, because sometimes we'll talk to people for 3 hours on the phone and then they run off to the carrier to sign up. And they're like, well, you told me to sign up for that. I'm like, well, we enroll you in that. That's how we get compensated. So it's kind of comical. So, it is.
Well, I find that horrible salespeople are very comfortable talking about money because there's less of the smoke and mirrors. So,
yes.
I appreciate that. And the clarity of knowing how you're compensated is very helpful. The same goes for Pearl Planning, that we work with people on the entirety of their financial life. In some cases, we manage their investments, but we also do financial planning only engagements. And if you had any questions about this conversation, or are thinking about retirement or preparing for Medicare, I think it's wonderful to work with a professional, experienced Medicare consultant, and it's also very helpful at any stage of your life to take your financial decisions a little more seriously and work with a professional. And so that's what I do here at Pearl Planning. You can see a picture of the team here, and don't hesitate to reach out either via our website or contact me or the office to get some help. And obviously, or I guess it doesn't necessarily go without saying, but we're available for consultation. Initial consultations come with no cost. So, Joanne, thank you so much. Is there anything we missed? And if not, I just really appreciate your expertise and the plain language that you've used to describe a very complicated topic.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I think we touched on a lot of things, and I hope, again, it's not overwhelming. If everyone has questions, just reach out. I think we're both confident in what we do and how we operate. I think we do a good job for people, and that's, evidenced here, which is fantastic. Thank you. Just thanks for the
Yeah.
invite. It's a great discussion.
Well, you're welcome. And our intention with the format of this as a video is that it's available for you to share with friends. This may be a topic that you just wanted to educate yourself about because you're not quite there, but we're able to help you anticipate needs, and this is also easily shareable. So if there's someone you know that would appreciate learning more, don't hesitate to forward along a copy. And with that, thanks so much. Have a great day. Joanne, we're all set.
You're good. You're awesome.
Thank you. Was everything okay from your end?
Great. It was really good.
Good.
I can't wait to splash around too.
This was exactly what I was looking for, so I appreciate it so much. And we, and when I have it all approved, I'll let you know, and we'll forward you the link.
Excellent. Because then I can use it and spread it around too. I'm sure you don't mind that, right?
Oh no, of course not. And you know, if advisors are too afraid to do something like this, they can look at this as an example.
I just had a credit union up in Bay City ask me about that. They want to do more virtual stuff, so we're having a conference call to talk about it, which just cracks me up. It's like, what is there to talk about? Just
no, it's
like really?
Our world is so antiquated that it's easy for you to stand out. And I do love the vault. I think I told you that in my email.
Thank you. Tell Cameron.
It is really
that was his dream child. That was his idea.
Oh, good.
Totally his idea.
Oh, I will make sure to tell him.
Thank you. Yeah, he just said we need a place where it's just everything people know, so you don't get lost, because otherwise they get into Google, they don't know where to go, they get solicited because every time you want to do a quote, you have to put in your phone number, and then they get attacked by more agents. So yeah, it's a great way for us to answer questions. You know, here you go. Here's the vault page. Goodbye.
That's
works
perfect.
Great.
Well, have a great day. I appreciate it. And I know I'll be talking to you soon. I already owe you a contact. So, and if there's anything that you think of that would be good for me to know, I'm always looking to learn. So keep me in the loop.